presenter is Tim Waggoner. He is a Bram Stoker award-winning author with over 40 published novels and 4 short story collections. And he also manages to find time to teach writing at Sinclair Community College. Tim, come on up.
So why write or read horror? Stimulates your imagination, provides for catharsis, and is a safe way to face fears. And that's something we all need to do from time to time. Maybe more often than other times. She looked like she's facing fear, turning away. All right, so part 2 of this. It's a safe way to come to terms with death. I mean, it's why we have Halloween, we have the Day of the Dead, we have these images of skulls around here. It's also a safe way to come to terms with the evil in the world, because the evil's often masked. It's like a rodeo clown, distracting us from the really bad things in the world. It's a safe way to explore and get to know our own dark sides. Everything you know is wrong, because horror comes from a violation of what your characters perceive to be reality. The universe isn't orderly or benign, endless stories, not in real life necessarily. It's chaotic and malicious. Gives you a chance to kind of express those feelings or work out those feelings that we have from time to time about why do bad things happen. A horror writer's palette, if you're going to be writing horror, different emotions you can evoke: dread, the mounting anticipation of a threat drawing ever closer; most important, terror, leave below that. Horror is the immediate reaction. We call it horror fiction, but it's like the third in the kind of hierarchy here. And there's some more in the horror writer's palette, and I apologize for this picture. Because it's a shock, a surprise, an adrenaline rush. You see that in a lot of horror movies because visual stuff and sound works really well for that. Disgust, a queasy visual reaction, which that painting might do for you. Now, dread and terror are the most effective, but all have their place when you're writing horror fiction. Down to the bone, horror is internal more than external. They're about people facing monsters, which is what's going on in the picture, how they react to it. It's not about the monster. Sometimes it's about becoming a monster. And too many people who write horror that make the mistake of thinking it's about the monster, and it's not. So, done to death, don't look in the basement. Once you see a specific type of character, threat, or story, once it becomes too familiar, it loses its power to engage. And especially in horror, because horror is about the unknown, it's about the unexpected. So if you've read something in books, stories, comics, seen it on TV, don't use it in your fiction without trying to rework it somehow, trying to make it fresh. So you're scary. Make your horror personal. Doesn't mean you have to write about traumatic things from your life, but things that strike you as interesting or different or weird or strange. Create the horror only you can write. I like that picture, I like that girl. Where no monster has gone before. I want to take new approaches to old tropes. You know, a trope is just a familiar thing that shows up in a story. So you reverse a trope. For example, a vampire that gives victims life instead of takes it away. You can also put new clothes on an old trope. Jason is just the Grim Reaper dressed up. Freddy is just Satan dressed up in different clothes, and Hannibal Lecter is just Dracula. Don't make your stories a very simple walk through a carnival spook house. Character and story always comes first. After that, your tale can be as weird and as extreme as you want to make it. Like one of the earlier slides said, that horror is a reaction story. You got to have people to react to it. They have to be impacted by it, or else it means nothing. Into the depths, right, with a deep point of view to show your characters' emotional reactions to events. It's like what I was saying before. If readers can empathize with your characters and the threats these characters face will be meaningful. Otherwise, they're video game characters that are just being mowed down. That might be fun in a movie, but probably not when you're trying to read something. So respect, even if the characters have only a short time on stage. I think she had about 20 minutes in the film. Before they die, you want to give them their dignity. I mean, she was a fully developed character if you've seen the movie Psycho. Try to present them as full, rich characters as much as possible. It increases your reader's emotional involvement, and then if you kill them, they're going to be really sad, which is good. The end is only the beginning. Don't save your best for last. Begin with your best idea. A lot of people, when they write anything, they come up with a cool idea and they work toward the end. Start with that cool idea and make it even cooler as you go. All right, keep a sense of mystery going in your story. Why is this is good for any fiction, actually. Why is this happening? What's going to happen next? And for horror fiction, how much worse can it get? It's really a lot like a magician's trick. Magician tricks aren't very interesting once you know how they're done. It's all about the way that they're done and the way that you delay the expectation of the audience. Heard So Good, this is from the, you can't really tell from the image, it's the Raven on the bust of Palace and the Raven from Pipone. Mental, emotional, spiritual wounds characters suffer, they can be far worse than physical pain or death. Like I always tell students, death should be the nicest thing that happens to characters in your story. If you think about that poor man who's just so completely upset in The Raven. All right, the spiral of horror, this is a pattern that horror stories often follow. Instead of a straight kind of linear pattern or like the rising action you might see in story diagrams, what happens is in the middle is the thing that the story is about, usually the scary thing. And if the story circles around it with little bits and pieces of it showing up or the characters being aware of it, getting tighter and tighter until you get to the middle and they confront it. So how you write is just as important as what you write. Here's a boring horror scene. This is it in entirety. There was a monster outside the front door. A man opened the door and the monster ate him. And that's what happens. But it's not very interesting. It's how it happens. And this is true probably for all fiction too, but it's really vital. Okay, Bob had his hand on the knob, was just about to turn it, open the door, and walk outside to check the mail when he felt the metal vibrate beneath his flesh. Not much, just a little, but it made him think that someone on the other side had put their hand on the outside knob, making it jiggle the tiniest bit. It's all about delaying, too. And was the metal starting to feel colder as if a silent Arctic wind caressed the knob outside? It was a ridiculous thought, but he removed his hand from the knob all the same and, without realizing it, took 2 steps backward. I cheat with point of view there when I say he didn't realize it. By that point, you can get away with it. And ending it, the suspended moment, this is one of my favorite memes. It's H.P. Lovecraft, whose stories often end pretty awful. It's the point at which the character reaches a terrible epiphany and the story stops. It often leaves the character suspended in that moment, and it forces the readers to kind of imagine what happens afterwards. Shirley Jackson has a story called The Summer People, which ends with 2 people in the dark, and probably bad things are going to happen to them afterwards. It's all in your mind. And that's what the best horror is. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim Waggoner. Bet you're all going to think twice about the next doorknob you encounter. Just saying.